Alright guys, so there's been some questions about how to get OBS Studio working up for a lot of people who are more experienced with OBS Classic. I'm looking at you, Cobra. Um, but I figured a lot of people who might be interested in getting live streaming or recording for YouTube started might want to see how it's done. And there's plenty of people who will put the content on the internet without necessarily showing you what goes into setting it up. Now, I have an extremely basic setup. I am not the most advanced YouTuber on the planet. If you can set this up the way I'm doing it, you'll have an effect very similar to mine. Okay, I'm using OBS Studio 64-bit version. At the time of print, this is version 18.0.1, which is, I believe, the current version. You will need a few items. You will need your personal co-pilot. Your breed may vary. You'll need the ridiculous Russian hat, available from your own military surplus store. There's also eBay. Now, specifications wise, I'll show you a quick idea of the specification for my own computer. This way, when I show you the screenshots of my settings and I explain how you find them, you'll know that what works for me should work for a computer this or better. Okay. So, step one, I've just taken screenshots of my system specs and stuff because getting OBS to record itself is not going to happen. You will not be able to read anything. So I'm just clicking to this here for the moment, and I'll explain how I'm doing that in a moment as well. So this is it currently set in display capture, and it is literally just looking at the front screen monitor that I have. This will record everything you see in front of your monitor, warts and all. I have adjusted it. I have adjusted the border slightly so that that it's missing some of the right hand side, just the last couple of pixels width on the right hand side, about the same width along the bottom. That is my taskbar, because nobody needs to see that mess. That's just the specs that I'm working with. It's not the most newest computer, as you can see. I got 32 gigs of RAM, which is more than I'll ever need for the foreseeable future, at least. 64-bit system running an i7 3770 model, rated about 3.9 gigahertz. That's a total of 8 cores. This is at least, as of the time of this writing, one generation older than current, probably 2 generations off the top of my head. Most people will have a computer at or in excess of this, and to be honest, you could get away with the i5 equivalent of this and it would work just as well. Because OBS and most other games that you'll be recording will never use 8 cores, let alone 4, let alone probably even 2 if you're playing DCS. Alright, so graphics card. The graphics card is not amazing. I have a GTX 680 thanks to SteelBeast Cobra. I used to record with a GTX 480. This guy here. That's a GTX 250 actually. I have also recorded with that in the past as well. My GTX 480, as you probably know, gave up the magic smoke. I have gone from a half gig graphics card to a 1 gig graphics card to the current graphics card I have at the moment. Neither of which are high-end graphics cards, and I'm still able to record the shows that you see. So, how am I doing that? Well, I'll show you some screenshots of OBS's settings. First of all, I'll show you what the front screen generally looks like. Here is a screenshot of... where is it? Go away. Yes, this will do. This here is a screenshot of what the OBS screen looks like when I have it set in display capture mode. You will see I've made my video capture device, which is my webcam. I've dragged that and resized it using the mouse just by grabbing these points and dragging them around. And I've put that in the top corner, and then using these arrow keys I've put that on the top. Behind that I have my display capture, which I have then also selected to be the monitor that you now see in front of you, and I have resized it so that just the ever so slight edge along the bottom here is missing. I can also resize that if I want to have the full screen, although it doesn't tend to usually matter too much. I'm a bit lazier like that. Now, this will work for games that are particularly old, and ones that are not, shall we say, FPS intensive. If you don't care that you're getting 30 frames per second or less, display capture will work. What you will find is when I record in display capture on titles like Falcon BMS and DCS, it will stutter. You will have screen tearing and things like that. For that purpose, you have game capture mode. Now, because I used to have NVIDIA graphics cards that did not support shadow play, I never used I never used that encoder. I've found it somewhat tricky with older games as well. So here is a screenshot of my settings. Now this is my settings set up for every single system I do, whether it's a game capture or display capture. I'll explain more about game capture in a moment. I use the x.264 encoder. Yes, there are tidier versions of that out there. You can use NVEnc if you've got a graphics card like mine or older, or newer. But this will work with pretty much any graphics card that has the grunt or power to play any game that you would foreseeably want to play for the near future. I actually rescale it down a little bit for my live streams because I live in Britain where we get about 10% of our download speed. I have 150 megs down and barely 15 megs up supposedly. I think it's more like 1.5, so 1200 by 768 is what you guys tend to see it rendered in, which gives you a little bit of a downscaling effect, but it's that or getting no live stream, or not without constant buffering. And even then, I still get buffering from time to time when I'm using multiplayer and stuff. Constant bitrate because I prefer to have things. I'd rather have them all the same quality. Variable bitrate is really actually supposedly better for live streams, but I prefer constant bitrate because then I just cap it at 25,000, which is meant to be around about 60-70% of my upload speed. Give me the rest for comms and multiplayer traffic. I always set because I've got a decent computer, I've got lots of cores, I always set the CPU usage to the highest going, the very fast setting. And the keyframe intervals is set to 2 because my YouTube setup on my settings screen demands it. Basically, they say use keyframe interval 2. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but that's what they want. You don't need to do that if you're recording. That's only for live streaming. Profile, I just leave that, and tune, I leave that as well. And I have variable frame rate disabled, and I don't play around with any x264 options. Partly because I'm not well versed in them, and partly because what's working works for me. There is another tab which I haven't screenshotted, which is the recording tab. I have it set so that it'll use the same settings as streaming, and I find that it works equally well for both, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? As for audio, you can set that as desired. I only have one microphone, and it's the one that you're listening to right now, so I just adjust the settings on the front screen. More on that in a moment. Now, let's say you want to... Oh, here's page 2 of my settings, actually. I'll use Direct 3D to do the rendering. I could use OpenGL, but I tend to find Direct 3D works better with titles like BMS and Dangerous Waters, probably because they're rendered in Direct 3D. The video adapter, you would only use that if you have multiple video adapters in your computer. So if you've got 2 video cards, you want to make sure that the video adapter that you're using is being used. I guess you could select there. I only have one graphics card. First world problems, right? Color format, color spacing, you can play around with these settings. They'll give you the range of colors that your graphics card is capable of playing that gives you the desired look and feel of your screen. Audio monitoring device, you're going to tell it which set of speakers to listen to. You can set it to just whatever the game is outputting. I actually prefer to just have whatever's coming through my ears straight through the recording system. I could be nicer about that, and I could have, for example, stuff on TeamSpeak or stuff on Discord that doesn't show up, but I don't tend to have to worry about that at the moment. The file formatting is purely so you can find it on your computer if you decide to record it. You'll know what folder you've set, that's part of your settings. I'll not mess with that too much. And you can also enable it to automatically reconnect, but that's really only to do with live streaming. If for some reason I lose connection, I can have it automatically retry, and it will buffer and hold some of the replay while that's happening. I also have to manually tell it whether to use my Ethernet port or my Wi-Fi port. because I will connect to BMS or DCS or any of my online guys, usually with my Wi-Fi card, and then have OBS go through my Ethernet card. It gives me a more stable experience with my gaming. It keeps the ping mitigated. Even though I'm using one connection, it's going through two different areas. Although sometimes I have problems and I can manually tell it to use Wi-Fi or manually tell it to use the Ethernet instead. But then I tend to find that my Wi-Fi card does not support live streaming all that well. Anyway, you only need to worry about the majority of those settings if you're going to do a live stream. You're just recording, you just need a decent hard drive that will record at least as fast as you're playing. I, for myself, use a high-speed SATA drive. I don't have SSD in my computer, okay, and it works just fine for me. Now, what's the last screen going? This is the settings under game capture mode. So if you, instead of doing display capture, let's say you want a bit more performance for things like Falcon BMS or DCS, you'll probably want to use game capture. Display capture takes whatever is being passed to your monitor and records what's on the monitor exactly as you see it. And on paper that sounds really good, but it's actually resource intensive for your computer. This is why I said older games like Dangerous Waters will handle it, because it actually will always work, pretty much. Display capture will always work at reduced compatibility. Game capture isn't theoretically as compatible with your newer games, and it certainly is a lot more of a frames per second hit. You don't get as smooth recording. However, for games like Dangerous Waters, that doesn't matter. For games like Grand Prix 4, Falcon BMS, and so on, I tend to actually use game capture whenever I possibly can. With game capture though, what I've found is, because I have a 3-screen monitor, I sometimes find that it will either not record the correct monitor, or it'll record but it'll just be black because it's getting really confused as to which monitor is the priority monitor or whatever. Also, games like BMS, with them being using an older rendering system, don't tend to like this so much. So you will usually have to, under the properties screen, so you'll go into sources, you'll bring on a game capture mode, you'll start Falcon BMS, you'll wait until it's at the front screen, the menu, and then you'll alt tab out and you'll set game capture up. And when you set game capture up, it'll ask you to capture any full screen, and on most new games this works, but for BMS it doesn't. What you do instead is you hit capture specific window, and under the window you find BMS as one of your active windows. You'll probably also have OBS, you'll probably also have IVC if you're playing online, things like that. Just make sure you select Falcon BMS. Scaling and stuff like that you can elect to modify and play around with, but you, generally speaking, don't need to worry too much about that actually. What you do instead is, I've lost the screenshot for it, just bear with me a moment, is I'll just build a screenshot here. There you go, live Gyazo. What will happen instead is you'll set it to transform, and then you'll set it to stretch to the screen. And what this means is that when BMS comes back to the screen, even when you're going from 2D to 3D, the OBS screen will change dynamically to fill the entire image of the studio screen, and that will give you all of the screen space used up for just your game. Now, triple screen. I don't use triple screen even though I'm able to. Why? Because usually what I'll have is I will have OBS running on the right hand screen, my live stream system set up on my left hand screen so I can see the chat feed and see who's saying hi and stuff like that. And I may also have things like Discord or TeamSpeak running in the corner as well, so I can see if anyone's trying to talk to me or if something important is happening with the squadron when I'm doing your UAF. For that reason, I can't use triple screen. Even if I could, I actually have 3 different size screen monitors. I have a 4x3, a 16x10 and a 16x9 monitor. The joys of picking up all your monitors cheap and cheerful off of the pawn shops. You get what you can take. If I had 3 screens of equal size, equal resolution and equal width, it would probably be a lot easier, but hey, it's me. So the settings that I'm giving here will definitely work, as far as I'm concerned, for single screen usage and single screen recording. Also, something to bear in mind is that when you're recording in triple screen, you'll tend to find that your video feed will just be one really long letterbox, and very few people, unless they have triple screen themselves, will actually be able to clearly make out what you're actually recording. Because all they'll see when they're putting it into a normal screen is a huge black line at the top and bottom, like a widescreen format being shown on a 4:3 TV. It's not the greatest. So when I'm recording, I'll record in single screen, and that allows me to monitor my chat, monitor other things that are going in the corner. I may, for example, have notes, PDFs, documents, checklists, whatever, on my left and right screens. I use them as assistant screens rather than to enhance my experience. Cobra, I know you use triple screen. What I would like for you to try is just try those settings first and see if they can at least get you recording with one screen. If you can get recording satisfactorily with one screen, from there you can probably just tweak the settings, alter the size of the window area, things like that. You might even be able to stitch together a few different displays. I'm not that familiar with OBS and triple screens, so this is really just to get you started. However, if you can get this working, it should at least get you up on your feet, recording, and getting some content out there for the people who want it, including yourself. In the meantime, you've got a baseline set of notes, you've got a baseline set of settings, which should work for, well, they work for me on BMS, they work for me on Dangerous Waters. I hope they work for you. So just to recap, if you're using BMS or DCS, probably Steel Beasts as well, although it's been a while, I can't remember exactly how I set that up. You want to use game capture and you want to specify the exact window that you're screen capping. Okay? If you're using older games, or if game capture does not work and you just get a big black screen, record in display capture, nominate the display that you want to record from. This will limit you to single screen. And just let it record whatever shows up in front of the screen. Okay. Now I'm playing Dangerous Waters via Steam because I downloaded it from Steam in the first place. I use the Windows 10 wrapper, which is available on the internet, and if you need the link, let me know, but I believe you already have it. And that should allow the game to play on your Windows 10 computer. If you cannot get it to play on your Windows 10 computer, don't even bother with OBS in it yet. Once you get the game running, then get OBS going. Okay, but I can tell you now, you also want to make sure, if you're messing around with Dangerous Waters particularly, to make sure any fancy anti-aliasing or anything like that is turned off inside the NVIDIA control panel. Let the application for Dangerous Waters decide what it wants to do with settings. Otherwise shit will break. Okay, that's something I missed the last time I was talking to you about it, but I believe with OBS Studio and NVIDIA control panel being set properly, Dangerous Waters should at least record, and that is very light on your computer. That's a great way to get you back into things. BMS, you know how to set that up from your days of OBS Classic. If you still have OBS Classic, I'd encourage you, if you find that working better, to give that a shot as well. For me, OBS Studio worked better, and it allowed more stable frames, and it allowed a better experience, and it was much easier for me to do things like move my ugly mug around and for the face cam and put it in the corner and stuff like that. I really hope that's been handy for the people who want to get to know to start all this. If there's any more questions about getting OBS up and running, or if you're having something you're really struggling with, give me a message down in the comments poke, or go on my Discord channel if you have Discord, and leave a message there between me and a few of the other people that are on that channel. I'd be quite happy to help you all out. Until then, I am planning on doing a few odds and ends this afternoon for the house. Basically, I've got some stuff to get in town and stuff like that. After that, I'm going to do a little bit of Grand Prix 4, and I might give Steel Beast 4 a go now that it's all up to date with version 4.019. I've heard wonderful things, such as that the BRDM2 ATs are currently available, and I need this Russian hat to get some proper bias. We'll catch you later, okay?